Good Monday morning, and thanks for listening to my musing this week. Last week, I was able to talk about communion. This week, I want to talk about all the sacraments. Not specifically, but I want us to understand what might it mean for us to think of the whole world in terms of the sacraments. How do we understand these places and rituals where, as some people have spoken, the world seems to become thin? The layer between earth and heaven becomes navigable, and we feel the presence of God even more deeply than usual. If we can take a sacramental approach to theology, a sacramental approach to the world, perhaps we're able to feel the presence of God more regularly, more often, increasing our sensitivity to the blowings of the Spirit and how the Spirit might be leading us. You might know that within the Presbyterian Church there are two sacraments, two moments in life where we say the veil between heaven and earth seems to grow thin. For us, that's the ritual of communion and the ritual of baptism. If you know Catholics, if you were Catholic, if you are Catholic, they count 7 sacraments. I came from a Baptist background where technically there are 0 sacraments and there are 2 ordinances. Maybe we talk about the difference, probably not. What I hope that you might begin to think about, as I have, is if we don't count the moments that are officially thin places, can we recognize that God is present with us, moving in all of the moments of our lives? That when we recognize in moments like communion and baptism that God is present and that these are special moments where our inner dispositions are outwardly expressed, perhaps we can realize that that can be constant. Our ways of feeling, praying, and recognizing God in our everyday quotidian actions, that is a real possibility if we think sacramentally. So how do we do that? I hope you might stick around and listen a bit more. So, we have formal moments where we make certain kinds of oaths, we make certain rituals, baptism and communion. And again, these are special moments in our life, separated from the other. The word for separated, set apart, is holy. These are holy moments. We separate ordinary time from extraordinary time, where we say at church for these purposes. There are 2 formal sacraments, baptism and communion. They are ritualized so that we know that these are moments set apart from ordinary time. What's the word we use in church for set apart? Holy. They are holy, formal moments. But if we seek to live holy, ordinary lives, a little bit oxymoronic, how might we start to do that? I think it comes in a sacramental way of doing theology. The sacraments are set. For the Catholic Church there are 7. For Presbyterians, mainline churches, there are 2. Quakers and Baptists, maybe they call them ordinances, maybe they have none at all. But the experience, the religious experience that people across the broad swath of the church have noted is that there are ways of touching holiness on a regular basis. Prayer, like Paul tells us to do continually, is a holy thing. We alter the definition of holy when we say we are supposed to do it all the time. So the point is not to make things extra special. The point, in my mind, is again to make that space between heaven and earth thin, so that we touch and feel and are sensitive to what God is doing in our everyday, ordinary lives. If we take the Catholic Church as an example, because they have more sacraments formalized, we say that marriage is an oath, a sacramentum, where we say this is the sort of life that we have chosen to live. 2 people joined together forsaking all others, love winning the day, reading 1 Corinthians 13, dressing in your best. But the ritual of the wedding precedes the life together in marriage. The wedding, to be married, is the sacrament, but the process, the life of being married, is sacramental. That marriage can be a school of charity. What do I mean by that? Probably you don't forgive anyone quite as much as you forgive your wife, your husband, your children. It takes a lot of forgiveness to make the thing work. It takes a lot of love to make the thing work. And by choosing that kind of life, that kind of relationship, we're able to think and understand things about love and forgiveness and listening and patience that we wouldn't otherwise learn just from being around our drinking buddies. The sacrament is the ritual, but sacramental thinking is the life that follows. Baptism is a ritual initiating us into the life of the church. At some level, it's incredibly important to begin the life of faith. Maybe not completely necessary to get into heaven. That's not what I'm talking about. But it is an important rite and ritual to say that we belong to one another. If that's the ritual, the sacrament, the ritual that starts that life, living life within the body of the church with all of its foibles, with all of its spunky personalities, difficult personalities, that is sacramental life, where we continue to learn things, and if we are thoughtful, if we are graceful and loving, the church also becomes a school for us in charity, where we learn things about God and one another, where that space where the Spirit is moving and we're perceptive of it, it becomes thinner so that we feel that presence more often. At least that's the hope. Maybe not every session meeting goes exactly like that. What are the other things that we are supposed to do where we have these rituals but we can continue in life living sacramentally? The Catholic Church points to confession, perhaps ordination. Out of all of the 7 sacraments, there is a ritual that starts a life that is supposed to follow. And so whether you're ordained or not as an elder or as a minister or not, whether you are married or not, whether you are baptized or not, whether you confess or not, I hope that you might take some time this week to consider how the life that you are living is sacramental. That there are ways of making oaths and promises about how we are supposed to live our lives as individuals with our own thoughts and feelings, and collectively as a church community, as a larger civic community, and we get to choose how we live. There is a way that is beautiful and graceful and loving, and probably you've experienced, perhaps you've been a part of things that are mean or frustrated, malicious, gossipy. Those things can happen too. So my encouragement to you this week is to think for you and for your community and for your family. How can you understand a sacramental life that tries to feel the presence of God more often than you already do, living in ways that are more graceful and more loving than you already do? Can you feel the divide between you and the Spirit growing thinner from these certain moments that point out these inner dispositions that we have, these inner feelings, can be expressed outwardly among other people? Finding ways among the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church, the 2 sacraments of the Presbyterian Church, or the innumerable things that you do in your ordinary life, it can make that veil thinner. So write a thank you card, call someone on the phone, find ways that you can pray, find spaces where you feel at peace and thoughtful. Finding those places and those practices that allow you to touch what is holy is an essential part of the life of faith. So I hope you'll think about how you can create some of your own and how you can live into some of the things that have been prescribed by the church. I'd love to hear about those. Email me your experiences of touching what you think is holy, living into the life that you hope to live. And perhaps I might use some of those in a sermon sometime. I've heard ministers are good about that. Until then, as you try to live a sacramental kind of life, I'll be thinking, and I will see you next Monday to talk about what I've been musing about.